Join me as we learn Chumash for the fifth day, Thursday, Parshas Vayechi, chapter 49, verse 19. Yesterday we began as Yaakov began to bless his children. The first 6 of his children were blessed. Reuven, Shimon, and Levi were rebuked, while Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun were given special blessings, as well as done. Today we continue starting with the tribe of Gad. Verse 19. Gad gedud yigudenu. Troops will march forth from Gad. V'hu yagud akef. And they will return on their tracks. Rashi over here is going to explain what this word Gad gedud and how this all comes into play and what the prophecy that Yaakov is saying. Verse 19, Rashi. Gad gedud yigudenu. V'hu yagud akef. Kulam lashin gedud heim. All the different words, Gad, Gedud, and Yigudenu, are all referring to troops, different groups. V'kach kibre Menachem, and this is what Menachem explained. Menachem is referring to Rashi's teacher concerning Hebrew grammar. His name was Menachem Besruk, and he talks about the different ways how, grammatically, what this word may be. Now Rashi explains, V'im Taimar, if you might say, Ein Gedud v'lo shnei dalsen, that the word Gedud is not written without 2 daleds. So therefore, what is Yigudenu and Yagud, which they only have 1 daled? How can they mean a troop? Yeshleimer, one can explain that the root word of the word Gedud, Shem Dover. Gedud, the troop itself, is like a noun. It's not describing anything. And however, when it comes to Yigudenu, Yagud, those are describing a certain type of action that happened. So the actual noun Tzadich Shnei Dalsin has to have 2 daleds, and that's why the word Gedud has 2 daleds. Shekein derech teva bashte yesius, because generally any word that's made up of 2 letters, the kafel b'seifa to be repeated at the end of the word again. So Gedud gimel daled, gimel daled, gimel daled. The kafel b'seifa. So therefore, the last one of the letters are repeated again. Ve'ein yeseda l'shtei yesius b'lvad, but the root word itself is only 2 letters. Now, what Rashi is now going to continue with, the rest of the Rashi is going to be bringing us many different types of such type of examples, where you have the word with only one letter, or then it's repeated at the end. So, for example, as it says in the book of Proverbs, Katzipor lanud, the tzipor, the bird moves, migizras, and that's from the same word, like nidudim, but it only says it once, lanud, to move, v'savaiti nidudim. Sham nafal shadud. Over there in the book of Judges, it says over there, a demon fell, which comes from the word shade. Megizras yashu tza'aroyim af yagud yugedenu. So too in our case, where it says the word yagud yugedenu ugedud, all 3 of these words, means zera achas, are all coming from the same word, which means troop. When he's talking in a word of activity, of a verb, Ein a kafel, it's not repeating it. Like we mentioned before, the few words that he said, Yagud, Yadnud, Yarum, Yashud, Yashuv, all of these are made up of 2 words of 2 letters, which is their root word. For example, Gad, Ram, Shaid, Shav. But when he uses them in a verb, he does not repeat the letter at the end. He only says it once. When he's talking about an action that happened in the past, or an effect that it's happening on somebody else, kafel, then he would repeat it. For example, Yiskaidaid, Yisnaidaid, Yisreimim, he groups together, he wanders, he uplifts, he assimilates, Yisaidaid, or he which is from the root word of aid, bilashim mafil, so too malashim mafil, when he gets others to do. So, for example, the shevev, yasim valmana yoideid, l'shevev, Yaakov elav. So again, over there, when he's using the root word, maybe 2 letters, but when it's talking about having an effect on somebody else, he's going to add the letter again at the end of the word. Same thing over here in our verse, af yigudenu amrakan. So too over here, when he uses the terminology yigudenu, they will troop together. Ein alashin. And that's not talking about that other people will do it. Ella, from them they will gather groups. My children went out, or they went out from me. So too, when we're looking back at our verse, what is it referring to? Gad gedud yigedenu, that troops will march forth from God. Gedudim yagudu yimenu, meaning that troops will come forth from them. that they will go together with their brothers to the other side of the Jordan to war. Kol chulutz, all the people who are ready for war. Until the actual land of Israel is conquered, and then they will come back, and in exchange of that, as we read at the end of the book of Numbers, they will get the allotted portion on the other side of the Jordan. And they will return on their tracks. So what does this mean? This Rashi explains refers to the tribe of Gad. Kol gedud of Yeshuv ala kevam. All of the tribe of Gad will return back home in peace. Lenachalasam, to their plot of land. Shalakhu be'ivra yarden, that they took on the other side of the Jordan. V'lo yipakit me'im ish, and nobody will be missing. That everybody will return home safely. Akev, usually akev means a heel, but over here it means in the same way they went. B'darko b'msiloisum shaholchu. That these troops that went to war will be able to return home safely in the same way they went. Yeshuva, they will come back. Kemoi, we find this, where it says that your footsteps are not known, meaning that the word akev, though it means generally heel, but it also refers to a person's steps of where they walk and how they walk and where they go. In other places we find, and as it says in Old French, tarzis, where you go, your steps where you take, is noticeable that you've gone there. Verse 20. Now he goes to Asher. Me Asher shmei nalachmi. From Asher's territory will come forth the richest foods. V'hu yitain madani melech. And he will provide the king's delicacies. What does this mean? Me Asher shmei nalachmi. So Michael, a food, which is generally, we call the general food, can be referred to as the word bread. The word lechem doesn't only mean bread, but it refers to the general concept of food. That will come from the portion of Asher. Yehei shamein will be juicy, will be oily, meaning because there are a lot of olives in his portion. And he'll have so much oil like a wellspring that there'll be so much oil they'll be dipping all their foods into oil. Moshe gave him the same similar blessing. That his land will be so steeped in oil like water that they'll be able to immerse in oil. That it's said in the tractate of Menachos, and it's brought us in a factual state where this blessing actually came to be. That one time, the people of Lutkia, which is a place in the land of Syria, needed Leshem and needed oil, and they sent a messenger. He went from place to place until he came to a place which was full of oil, and they gave him a bucket and they gave him a full bucket of oil, and it says that he was able to immerse himself, meaning that the oil that they gave him was worth hundreds of thousands of zuzim that he was able to get at the time. Verse 21, we now move on to Naphtali. Naphtali ayola shlucha. Naphtali will that the fruit of Naphtali's property will ripen as quick, and literally the translation of here means Naphtali, a deer set loose. Hanoisen imrei shafar, one who offers words of praise. What does this mean? So there are multiple interpretations as we'll see inside. Rashi. Ayola shlucha. What is the word ayola shlucha? Zu bikas ginoiser. This refers to the valley of Ginosar. The valley of Ginosar, which came into the portion of Naphtali. Shehikala levashel. In that area, it was quick for the fruit to ripen. Peresa, its fruit to come quick. It's referring to an area which is by the Kinneret. The Talmud says in the tractate of Megillah that Kinneret was called Ginoisar, and one of the reasons why it was called Ginoisar was because its fruit are very sweet, as the sound of a harp or violin, and therefore it was called the Valley of Ginoisar. It was compared to a deer because it has very good fruit. The same way this dove, who very quickly goes to a place, the deer can go from one place to the next very quickly, so too these fruits ripen quickly, and they are very tasty. Ayola shlucha, meaning the deer that is sent, ayola mushulachas ratus, that the deer runs very quickly and you cannot stop it in its tracks. Hanoisinim reishafer, or one who offers words of praise. Kitargumai, like the Targum says. that any person that eats the fruit will give praise and say, wow, these are beautiful, delicious, great fruit. Davar Acher, this is referring to something else as well. That this can be explained on Milchemes Sisra, about the war of Sisra. Nisnabe, Yaakov was giving a prophecy about that when Sisra came to wage war against the Jewish people, the tribe of Naphtali hurried and recognized that this was dangerous, and they were the first to go out to war against them. And as Devorah tells Barak in the book of Judges, and you'll take 10,000 people from the tribe of Naphtali, and you will go there, and they went there hastily. It also says there, which means sent, which also shows that they went quickly, that they quickly, Barak ran to be able to wage war against them. Another gives words of praise. This is referring to the song of Devorah. That because of Naphtali, because of the tribe of Naphtali, Barak and Devorah later on gave song to the success of the Jewish people on the waging of the war against Sisra. The rabbis give another explanation to this, that this is referring to Al Yom Kvuras Yaakov, on the day that Yaakov was buried. Now, what does it mean that they will give praise to what he said? Because when Yaakov was being buried, as we're going to learn later on in the Torah reading, that Esav came complaining and saying, 1 second, Leah's already buried there. The other spot in the cave of the patriarchs is for me. And what happened was, they had to send Naphtali to the land of Egypt to go bring the document that showed that Esav was willingly gave up and sold, as we spoke a few weeks ago, that when Yaakov gave him all the money, when Esav set out to Mount Seir, Yaakov purchased from him the rights to be buried in the cave of the patriarchs. But he had to show him the document. The document was in the land of Egypt, as it says in the tractate of Saita. And Naphtali was the one who quickly ran to bring the document, because he was blessed to be like a deer that he can run quickly. V'targumoi, the Targum explains, Yisre me adve, in a good land, Yipel Chevle, he will have his portion. And he will thank God, because he will give thanks to God that he was able to get such a beautiful property with such great fruit, and it's great things that come from it. Verse 22, we are now about to describe Yosef's blessing. Ben Peiras Yosef. Yosef is a charming man. Ali Oyin, charming to the eye. Benois Tzada Ali Shur. The girls used to walk up along the wall to gaze upon his beauty. And as we're going to see, there are different explanations of what this means, how and what Yosef and what Yaakov is referring to about this blessing. So let's see in Rashi what this means. Ben Yosef, Ben Peiras Yosef, Rashi 22, meaning Ben Chain, he will find grace in people's eyes, a charming individual. V'ulosh Narami, the word Peiras is an Aramaic word, like in the words Epiria Nimtel Rab Shimon, that Rabbi Shimon accepted grace from upon us. Let us grant favor to Rabbi Shimon, as it's discussed at the end of the tractate of Baba Metzia. Ben Peiras Alayoyin. So Rashi explains, he was charming to any eye that saw him. He was very pleasant to the people that saw him. But that the girls would go along the wall. So Rashi explains, the daughters of Egypt would walk along the wall of the city, to see his beauty. Therefore, he says, and even though he begins by saying plural, benois, many, but then tzada means walk. Tzada kol achas ve'achas. They would all walk one on their own. The daughters, they wouldn't go in big groups, but they would go one on their own. To go to a place that they should be able to view him from there. Davar Acher, another explanation. Ali shur al ri'asai. Because they see him, because the daughters of Egypt would then walk along the wall to watch his beauty, because of looking at him. Kemoi, I like the words ashurenu v'lei karev, that I see him, but it's not now. There's many different explanations of what this verse actually means. And this is what the seemingly simple interpretation is. After Rashi tells us the verse before, now he tells us the grammatical explanation of the word poras. Poiras, Tav Shabai, the Tav in the word Poiras, which is the last letter, is who Tikkun Aloshin, is making it sound better. Whenever a Tav can be at the end of a word, it's not necessarily changes the translation of the word, but the Tav can make it sound more poetic. Shur, what does the word shur mean? That comes from the word loshur, to see. We have this in other places. Ali shur b'shvil loshur. They went up on that. The women of Egypt, the girls of Egypt, went up on the wall that in order that they should be able to see better. The Targum Shem Unkelis, the explanation that Unkelis of the Aramaic translation in this is something else. Benois tzada ali shur, train shifting yipkum b'bnoi, meaning that two tribes will come out from his children, which is Menashe and Ephraim. And they will take part of two different sides of the Jordan. As we know, half of Menashe was part of the tribes that were on the other side of the Jordan. Because of Banais, and why does he write daughters and not sons if he had two sons? Because the children of Menashe, the daughters of Menashe, in referencing to the daughters of Tzalafchad, that they were on both sides of the Jordan. They were the ones that asked Moshe to have a portion in the land of Israel, and their portion happened to be somewhere on one side of the Jordan and somewhere on the other side of the Jordan. But these are the children of Yosef. Telling us that these children of Yosef, his children that will come from him, and the word Poiras comes from the word Pirya, Virivya, his children that come from him. Yesh Midrash Agadabay, there are other Midrashim in this verse, Hamisyashvim Alaloshin, that explain this terminology that's used in the verse. And they explain it as follows. When Esav came to greet Yaakov when he was returning back from Lavan's home, and the daughters of Yaakov and the daughters of everybody bowed down to Esav, and all of them, and all of them, the mothers went before the children to bow down to Esav. It says, that Yosef went first, and only afterwards Rachel. Omar Yosef, why did Yosef go before his mother? Yosef said to himself, Rasha Hazeh, this evil guy, Einei Rama, he thinks of himself haughty and great. Shema maybe he's going to look at my mother. And therefore he was concerned to protect his mother. He went first. And he picked himself up to protect her from Esav seeing her. And this is what his father's blessing him. Ben Peiras, because you, my son, lifted yourself, made yourself taller. Higdalta atzmacha Yosef, you made yourself greater. Therefore, where did you get this greatness from? Ali ayin shel Esav, to protect Rachel from the eye of seeing Esav. Lafichach, therefore, zachisa ligedula, you then merit to such great things. Banei sada ali shur. What's the greatness that you've gotten? Was that the girls should come out to look at you. When you were made viceroy of Egypt, all the girls came out of Egypt al Mitzrayim to everybody to see you. Another way that the Talmud explains it and the Medrash explains it. This was a blessing that Yaakov was giving Yosef, that his children will not be affected by an evil eye. So too, when he blessed Menashe and Ephraim earlier, Beiracham Kadogim, he blessed them similarly that they should be like fish. That no evil eye affects fish as well. Verse 23. Vayimararuhu, they embittered his life. Varoibu, and they became assailants. Vayistamu, they hated him. Baalei chitzim, destined to share with him with arrow, sharp tongues. What does this mean? Who made his life bitter? What was going on over here? And it refers to, again, as we continue with Yosef. Verse 23, Rashi. Vayimararuhu varoibu. Many people made Yosef's life miserable until Yosef became the great person he is. Vayimararuhu, who made his life bitter? Echav, his brothers, that they sold him. Vayimararuhu, who made his life bitter? Potiphar v'ishtei losrei, Potiphar and his wife, that they imprisoned him. Loshin vayimararu as chayim, same from the same word, which means that they made the Jewish people's life bitter. Varoibu, and they became his assailants. Nasalei echav ancheriv, his brothers became his counterparts, his assailants who were fighting with him. Ve'ina loshin zeh po'alu. This is not talking about the actual action. Shimken hayu linakid varavu. It would have been a kamatz under the vav. These are the people that were fighting with him. Also, if this is talking about like shooting arrows at him, he should have said va. This is something that has already happened, that the brothers were the ones that were fighting with him. That from heaven it was already destined that it should happen. All those mean that somebody else did it. And Rashi is telling us the grammatical difference if it's when you look at the root word and how you would announce it, talking about a reference to others, or if the person did it himself, and how the activity, as we know that in Hebrew there are sheva binyanim, 7 different ways how things are, poel, piel, puel, and how something can be affected in the actual word and how it can be pronounced in 7 different types of terminologies. They were stealing from themselves or uplifting themselves. They became the ones who were part of the argument. Unclus uses the terminology, they were the ones that tried to take revenge. Bali chitzim, what does it mean with arrow sharp tongues or with arrows? What are these people with arrows? Shalasheinam kechetz, that their tongues were like arrows, meaning that they spoke about him very harshly, that they wanted to kill him, they wanted to throw him into the pit. V'targumoi, the Targum translates, Mari Palgusa, they were people who were divisive, divisiveness, that they tried to create arrows, Loshen Vatihi HaMechza, the word chitze means to half on one side, half on the other, that they created divisiveness amongst them. Those that were fighting with him, his brothers, that became his enemies. Verse 24. Vateshev be'isan kashtei. His prophecy concerning his brothers was fulfilled because he relied on God's might. Be'isan kashtei. Vateshev be'isan kashtei relied on God's might. Vayafoizu zreya yadav. His power was authoritatively established. The arms of his hands. Midei avir Yaakov were from the agency, one of Yaakov. Misham Roya Evan Yisrael, and from there one who sustains the people of Israel. What does this mean? What is he referring to? It sounds very cryptic. So Rashi explains as follows: Vateshav be'isen kashtei, nisyashva b'choizek. It was settled strongly. It was firmly established of what his power would be. Yadav, that his hands were decorated with gold and beauty. This was the ring that was given to him on the ring that was given on his hand. The Rashi before and kashtei over here means chodzkei, strong, that he was the one to be stronger than his brothers. What does it mean that his arms, that the Pharaoh put his ring on Yosef's finger, which made him then the one in charge? Loshin zahav mupas. The word vayafaizu comes from the word gold and beautiful, bright gold. Zeis hoysalei midei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Where did he get this power from? How was he chosen to be the one, the leader? This was given to him from God. Shuavir Yaakov, who was the father of Yaakov, the great one of the Jewish people. Umisham Allah, from there Yosef went up to greatness. Liyisrael Evan Yisrael, to lead the Jewish people. And therefore, the Jewish people are called Evan Yisrael. Why he was called Evan Yisrael, the rock of the Jews, Ikaran Shal Yisrael, the foundation of the Jews, Lashain HaEvan HaReisha, the main rock, the main leader of the Jewish people, using the terminology of Malchus, of kingdom. For Unclus Afu, so too the Unclus explains it this way, that it's referring to the kingdom of Yosef. The Kach Tirgumi explains as follows: Vatesha v'tovas bahinu v'wasei, that his prophecy came to fruition. Those dreams that he said that the brothers would come to bow down to him. Because he kept the Torah in secret, because he kept the Torah even in the time of being in Egypt, therefore his prophecy came to be. This is an extra meaning. Why was Yosef? Why did Yosef merit this? This that the Targum is saying this is not found in the Hebrew language. This is something that he is adding in from the Aramaic. Shabamikra in the pasuk. And he put his trust in God. Targum, this he's translating as the word be'esan kashtei. The word kashtei, he's putting his strength in God. L'shena targum al ivri. This is the Aramaic on the Hebrew words. Vatoshev nevuase, that his prophecy returned b'shvili sadi because of his strength in al Kadosh Baruch Hu and God. Hu ha'isale lekeshes, that God was to him, as a keshes means for strength, for power, u'lemiftach, and in the faith of God. B'chein yisrama dahaval ra'oyi. Because of that, he was able to be above his brothers. His hands were then decorated. Lashem Paz, as we explained before, because of that, his hands were decorated with gold, that he became the viceroy of Egypt. Even Yisrael, the word Even is made up of Lashem Netrikun. It is a word that's made up of two words, of Ubein, a father and sons. Yaakov Avanav, that he became the leader of the Jewish people, not only for the sons, but also for the father, for Yaakov. 25, verse 25. Mekel Avicha, Yaakov continues to talk about the greatness of Yosef. From God, Mekel Avicha, from the God of your father, V'Yazrecha, who will help you, V'Shadai V'Varecheka, and of the Almighty who will bless you, Bircha Yisharmayim, the blessings of the heaven above, Meyal, from above, Bircha Yisrahoim, and the blessings that lie below, Reivetzas Tachas, with the blessings of insemination, Birchas Shadayim Verachim, and of the blessings of and of the womb. What does this mean? So Rashi explains as follows. Verse 25, from your father you had all this ability, the God of your father, and because of that he helped you out. Because your God was with your heart, when you do not listen to the words of your master's wife, that when she tried to seduce you, and you did not fall for it, and you did not listen because you had fear of God, as you said, I will not do so because I don't want to sin to God. Therefore God is the one that's going to bless you. The blessing of the womb. Birchas of the abo de ima. This is the blessing that the uncles translates, that this is the blessing to the father and the mother. Kaloimar, meaning as follows: Yizbaruchu ha'maylidim v'hayoldis, that those that give birth and those that give the ability to have the children, Shmuel will be blessed. What does this mean? What's the blessing? That the male should be able to give the drop that would give it the ability that they should be able to have become pregnant because of it. And the females, and the female should not miscarry the child or the fetus, and they should be able to bring the baby to full term. Shodayim, what is he referring to over here? That is referring to the semen of the father. Yada yada mitargaminan, as the Targum explains, ishtadoy yishti, he sends it forward, he shoots it. Av shodayim kan, so too when the word over here shodayim refers to al shem shazera yerekachetz, because the semen shoots forth like an arrow. The ability for the male to give birth in the female. Verse 26. Verse 26. Birches avicha gavru al birches heirai. The blessings bestowed by God upon me, your father, have surpassed the blessings of my forebears. Ad tavis givesalem, to the utmost bounds of the eternal hills. Tiyena l'reish Yosef, they will be, may they rest upon the head of Yosef. Ulekotkeit nezirechav, and to one who is separated from his brothers. What does this mean? Rashi explains to us in verse 26. Birchis avicha gavru. Habracha sheberechanu HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does this mean? Not that the blessings of that Yaakov is giving to Yosef is greater than the blessings that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov. Yaakov is talking about the blessings that God gave him or gave his parents, and he's giving to Yosef as what follows. Those blessings that God has given me continue to grow stronger and better even to the brachas that God blessed my parents, that the blessings that I got and that continue to have are stronger and more than the blessings that my parents got. Why? Atavis kivaselam. Lafi, as he explains, Shabrach, the blessings that I got, Gavru, they got stronger, there's no limit to them. Atsev Guli Givaselim, go to the end of the world, meaning to the highest hills, surpassed all the greatest blessings of the eternal hills. Because God gave me a blessing, He gave me a blessing for eternity without any limitations. And they reached the four corners of the universe, as God told Yaakov, Shenemar, as he said, when you will spread forth to the east and to the west, and to the north and to the south. But God never told that L'Avram Avinu to Yitzchak, where he gave them limitations. L'Avram, he said, look and see, see whatever you can see, that's what's going to be given to you. That means he only gave him he only gave him the land of Israel. Yitzchak, he said, to you and to your children I gave all these lands. I'll keep to the promise that I gave to your father Abraham. But to Yaakov, what does he tell him? To the north, to the south, to the east, to the west, it's all yours. Didn't limit anything. This is why Yeshaya says about somebody who keeps the Shabbos, I will give you the portion that God gave Jacob our father. But he doesn't say the one to Avram, because Yaakov's has no limits. Avram was only that he saw. What does the word Tavas mean? Tavas means it has a limit. Ashmultz. This is what Menachem and Tzruk explained, that the word means a limit, a destination. Hoirai means forefathers. Why the word Hoirai can't mean parents? Miloshin Haroyan. They're the ones that were pregnant with you. Shahiruni b'me'imi. They were pregnant with me in my mother's womb. So too, it also talks about, we find this Hoira begever, that the man was pregnant, but meaning the man gave birth, and that's why parents are called Hoirim. Ad Tavas means Ad Katseis, until the end, as we find this in the book of Numbers. You will desire, you will have an end to the east side, Tisol of Hamas, as well as he tell him you come to the edge of Hamas. Tiena, Kulam. All these blessings, the ones that I got, the ones of my parents, L'Reish Yosef, are given to the head of Yosef, are given to Yosef. Nazir Echav, what is the word Nazir Echav? A separation of his brothers. Perisha Dachoy, separate, Nivdal Me'achav, he's separate from his rest of his brothers. Like the word the Nazarite, the Nazar has to be separate from everybody else in the way he behaves. So too of Yenazar Mekachim and Yisrael, that it will separate from the holy things of the item of the Jewish people. Nazru Acher, so too we tell a person who is a Nazarite that he has to keep a distance. Rabbeinu Seinu Darshu, and the rabbis explain all these verses in a different way. And here's what the rabbis explain, starting from the 3 verses before, Vateshav ve'isen kashte. And they say as follows, Vateshav ve'isen kashte means that he was able to keep strong, meaning he was able to overpower his evil inclination. Al kvishas yisrei be'eshes adenov, that though he was seduced by his master's a wife, and she tried getting him to sin with him, he was able to withhold himself from sinning. What does the word keshes mean then? How does this work? The koirei keshes, he calls it a bow, an arrow, al shem shazera yere kechetz, as we mentioned before, that the semen shoots forth like an arrow. Vayafeizu zreyadav. What does it mean then that they went through his arms, his fingers? Kemei vayafeizu. The word vayafeizu, the zayin, can be interchanged for a tzaddik. Like you have za'aka, which means to scream, tza'aka, zayin and tzaddik are interchangeable. That what happened was, because she seduced him and he was about to be with her. However, he had to hold himself back, and the semen emanated from between his fingers, came out from between his fingers. And he did not have any relationship with Potiphar's wife. That's what it means, Midei Avir Yaakov, from the hands of his father Yaakov, that because of his father Yaakov, he had the ability to conquer his evil inclination. What happened was, at that moment, he had the image of his father in front of him, who told him, Yosef, your brothers are going to be written on the ephod, on the apron of the high priest. Do you want your name there? And at that moment, he was able to withhold himself from being with Potiphar's wife, as described in the tractate of Seidah. The unkels tirkim taivus, and the unkels translate the word taivus, loshin tava v'chemda, as desire, wish, giveis oilam of the great hills, meaning l'shem mitzukei aretz. This is referring to the great righteous and great scholars are referred to the hills, the top mountains. The hema brachas, these are the blessings that Yitzchak shechimdasen imay, that this is the blessings that Yitzchak's that his mother wanted that he should get from Yitzchak, v'izgika lekablam, and she made sure that Yaakov would get those blessings that he was now giving over to Yosef. This concludes the 5th Torah reading of Parshas Vayechi.